Well, happy Tuesday. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop, waking you up each and every weekday morning here with the Center Square on YouTube. Catch the live show, join the live chat, but also subscribe and hit that notification bell to get updates about news clips and other segments, all from the team at the Center Square. But here, each and every weekday morning, we do Illinois in Focus, focusing on what's going on in the land of Lincoln. So appreciate you guys being here. And of course, likes and all of that, the comments, they definitely help keep this show elevated in the algorithm. So if you enjoy what you're seeing each and every weekday morning, consider that. Also, consider signing up for the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. It's pretty simple. All you got to do is click that newsletter button up at the top right corner, and you can fill out what your interests are. Do you want to just know what's going on in Illinois? Do you want stuff coming out of D.C.? Do you want individual topics? So be sure to check that out and subscribe to get that daily newsletter in your inbox every morning so you can stay informed. Coming up, we've got some stuff to tackle. Of course, a lot of eyes are going to be on the U.S. Supreme Court with Mexico suing the U.S. over firearms, an interesting international case that the U.S. Supreme Court's going to be hearing. So we'll get to that a little bit, and also kind of see where we're at in the case that Chicago and Cook County have against Glock. So that case is still pending as well, so we'll look at that. Update on gun ban litigation. I looked this morning across the board with the case in the 7th Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals that the Southern District of Illinois found the state's ban on semi-automatic weapons and magazines over certain capacities was unconstitutional. That's still pending in the appeals court. There's been no activity on that. Other cases as well, still just hanging out. We're waiting on some timelines for other cases, including the Beavis versus Naperville in state of Illinois case, the Veramontes case, and so on. So not much activity when it comes to Illinois' gun litigation. So we'll definitely keep you abreast to the situation as it unfolds, but clearly a lot of eyes are going to be on the U.S. Supreme Court. So we'll tackle that in conversation about the guilty plea from Robert Crimo III in the Highland Park mass shooting and what that really opened up when it comes to the entirety of that story and how Crimo was able to get a firearm owner identification card despite having a clear and present danger against them. So we'll tackle that as well coming up. But we've got to also look at what's going on in Washington, D.C. with President Donald Trump and tariffs that went into effect at midnight and the ramifications thereafter. So stay tuned. That's on the way here with Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning as we bring you Illinois in Focus Daily.
It's the incentive we created, or the negative incentive. I mean, it's going to be very costly for people to take advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished. And they're being punished by tariffs.
That's President Donald Trump yesterday in the Roosevelt Room after announcing some big-time investments in the company, or in the country rather, from companies looking at technology. Pretty big deal, and he's made several announcements in the past few weeks of tech companies looking to get into the United States, but everybody's looking at those tariffs that went into effect overnight. Welcome in. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. While we focus on Illinois, it's also important to focus on what's going on in Washington, D.C. So let's go to the headlines at thecentersquare.com, where you can pull this up and see yourself. Trump announces a $100 billion investment from top semiconductor manufacturer, as this is being reported a week after Apple's $500 billion record investment in the U.S. That announcement came. President Donald Trump announced Monday that Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company plans to invest at least $100 billion in the U.S. over the next 4 years as well. Here is some of what the president had to say of those investments coming into the United States. And again, it's not just this one company, it's multiple companies.
Honda's coming, and I told you about Apple, that they're going to be starting to build massively here, $500 billion. And we have many other companies going to be announced, but we had many that have already announced. And now it's going to be great. It's looking really strong. I don't think this country has ever seen anything like we're seeing right now. Now, the tariffs, as you know, will start a week earlier than the reciprocal, which is going to be on a couple of weeks earlier. Reciprocal tariffs start on April 2nd. And I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to go April Fool's Day, because that costs a lot of money, but that one day. But so we're going April 2nd. But very importantly, tomorrow tariffs 25% on Canada and 25% on Mexico, and that'll start. So they're going to have a tariff. So what they have to do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, in which case they have no tariffs. In other words, you build, and this is exactly what Mr. Wei is doing, by building here. Otherwise, they'll build, if they did them in Taiwan to send them here, they'll have 25% or 30% or 50% or whatever the number may be someday. It'll go only up. But by doing it here, he has no tariff, so he's way ahead of the game.
So clearly you've got the tariffs coming into the conversation when it's about investment coming to the U.S., right? Trump said time and again that if the companies want to avoid having paid tariffs, then come to the U.S. and build their manufacturing base here. But there's also that element of the tariffs being used as punishment for the porous border, for the fentanyl, and so on. Again, here's Trump talking about those tariffs.
You have companies like this coming in, and almost 40% of their company in one signature is going to be devoted to what he does, which is one of the most important businesses in the world. That's an unbelievable thing. When Apple now is going to start building all of their plants here, all because of what we've done in terms of, it's not because he likes me or they like me. They don't probably like me at all. I don't know. I think he likes me a little bit at least. But you know what? It's the incentive we created, or the negative incentive. I mean, it's going to be very costly for people to take advantage of this country. They can't come in and steal our money and steal our jobs and take our factories and take our businesses and expect not to be punished, and they're being punished by tariffs.
Well, there's been a lot of reaction to the tariffs, including the stock market. Another headline at thecentersquare.com. Stocks tumble as Trump moves ahead with tariffs on Mexico and Canada. And again, you can get this headline at thecentersquare.com. President Donald Trump sent shocks to the stock markets after announcing tariffs against two of the nation's top trading partners, saying that there was no room left for negotiations with America's neighbors. He said tomorrow's tariffs, 25% on Canada, 25% on Mexico, and that will start, well, today. So they're going to have a tariff, and what they do is build their car plants, frankly, and other things in the United States, to which they will have no tariffs. The stock market obviously dropping initially 650 points. Previously, the president had said that the tariffs would remain in place until Mexico and Canada stop the flow of migrants and fentanyl into the U.S. But when it comes to these types of shock waves, obviously people feel it, right? You've got a 401k invested in the stock market. you're feeling it. Even the crypto market has dipped significantly. I mean, crypto, especially Bitcoin, was up to, $104,000 per coin just a handful of weeks ago. Now it's down to hovering around $85,000 per coin. So a lot of the investments people are making getting hit by this. Governor J.B. Pritzker putting out a statement yesterday as well, talking about the impact he sees is happening on Illinois families. We'll just read you some of this. The governor put this statement out saying Trump's tax on working families will have a devastating impact on Illinois' manufacturing and agricultural sectors and will hurt hardworking Illinoisans at the grocery store checkout, on their utility bills, and at the gas pump. Pritzker went on to say that I've spent the past few weeks talking with families, manufacturers, and even breweries who've been preparing to reduce production and raise prices, actions that have a ripple effect for supply chains in Illinois and across the country. Donald Trump swore to bring down costs at day one. Instead, he's taxing working families while embarrassing America on the world stage. I will be staying in close contact with representatives from Canada and Mexico to emphasize Illinois' commitment to an ongoing trade partnership, and I will not stop fighting to ensure Illinoisans get a fair deal for our economy and our families. So again, that's a statement from Governor J.B. Pritzker he released in response to the tariffs. Not the only thing Trump's doing that's causing shockwaves. Of course, what happened Friday in the Oval Office with Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, trying to come to an agreement with America over a minerals deal that could provide some security and so on. Obviously, it turned into a international drama unfolding with Trump and Zelensky sharing their really pointed discussion points, raising their voices even. But here is a question that got President Trump to talk about the Ukraine fallout. In particular, the question is, are Trump's positions on this essentially siding with Ukraine or Russia? Which is it?
That your foreign policy is largely in line with their vision. Should that be concerning to Americans?
Said what?
Should that be concerning to Americans?
Read the statement.
That Russia says that your administration's foreign policy is, quote, largely in line with their vision.
Well, I'll tell you what, I think it takes two to tango, and you're going to have to make a deal with Russia, and you're going to have to make a deal with Ukraine. You're going to have the assent, and you're going to have the consent from the European nations, because I think that's important, and from us. I think everybody has to get into a room, so to speak, and we have to make a deal. And the deal can be made very fast. It should not be that hard a deal to make. It can be made very fast. Now, maybe somebody doesn't want to make a deal. And if somebody doesn't want to make a deal, I think that person won't be around very long. That person will not be listened to very long because I believe that Russia wants to make a deal. I believe certainly the people of Ukraine want to make a deal. They've suffered more than anybody else. We talk about suffering. They've suffered. But if you think about it, under President Bush, they got Georgia, right? Russia got Georgia. Under President Obama, they got a nice big submarine base, a nice big chunk of land where they have their submarines. You know that, right? Crimea. Under President Trump, they got nothing. And under President Biden, they tried to get the whole thing. They tried to get the whole big Ukraine, the whole thing. If I didn't get in here, they would have gotten the whole thing. So I can only say you can go back to Bush, you can go back to Obama, and go back to Biden. They took a lot. The only one they didn't get, you know what I gave them? I gave them anti-tank missiles. That's what I gave them. I gave them sanctions on Russia. I gave them javelins. You know the javelins? You know when they took out all those tanks? You know the tanks were heading to Kiev by the hundreds, and they were unstoppable. And I gave them javelins. So, you know, I really, Putin is the one that will tell you this has not been so good for them. The fact is that I just want fairness.
It's President Donald Trump and the continued fallout of his actions amongst the establishment global elites, amongst the establishment U.S. politicians, and he's got a speech he's delivering tonight in front of a joint session of Congress, primetime. Interested to see all the things he's going to talk about and the reactions that'll likely pour in from opposition Democrats. So we'll review that for you tomorrow here with Illinois in Focus Daily. What's up in Washington, D.C.? Wake up with us each and every weekday morning for Illinois in Focus Daily live, or you can join the chat room. It's pretty lively in there. Keep it clean, guys. But you can also get this podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus and you'll find it. Don't forget, subscribe to the newsletter at thecentersquare.com. Crimo III pleading guilty yesterday in a criminal trial that was just starting to get underway. He is the one guilty for the Highland Park.
At the report
for the Highland Park mass shooting that happened on Independence Day in 2022. And the Highland Park mass shooting, killing 7, injuring dozens. Crimo initially apparently told police in a confession video during interrogation, but then recanted that. But that video is going to be admissible in court. So as the trial was starting to come together, jurors were picked. Instead of having opening statements, Crimo pleaded guilty. He's got 3 murder charges against the 7 people that he killed and dozens of other attempted murder charges. So clearly he's likely going to spend the rest of his life in jail. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Obviously in Illinois, the Highland Park shooting was used as one of the instances that propelled Illinois lawmakers to pass the ban on semi-automatic firearms and magazines over certain capacities in early January 2023. That law is being challenged in court on multiple different fronts, and clearly it's still unresolved as to whether the state government can ban semi-automatic firearms and magazines over certain capacities. But while that case is still pending in courts, not much movement as of late in the appeals court. We still have the law in effect. But one of the champions of that law, State Representative Bob Morgan, he posted on X about the guilty plea of Robert Crimo III. And I'll just read to you this string of texts that Morgan put out. He says, today's guilty plea is welcome news for the weary hearts in the Highland Park community. This is a small step toward justice following the July 4th, 2022 mass shooting, as we continue to recover and heal. He goes on to say, amidst the loss of Catherine Goldstein, Erna McCarthy, Kevin McCarthy, Steven Strauss, Jacqueline Sundheim, Nicholas Toledo, Zaragoza, and Eduardo Uvaldo, we have been bracing ourselves for a criminal trial. Therefore, avoiding a traumatic trial is in everyone's best interest. I want to thank the state's attorney's office of Lake County State's Attorney Eric Reinhart and his exceptional team in helping secure this justice. Our gratitude also extends to the physical and mental health professionals who continue to care for those injured and impacted. Morgan finishes up his post saying, gun violence did not begin or end in the July 4th, 2022 mass shooting. Over 100 people die from gun violence in the U.S. every single day. Let us recommit to preventing gun violence wherever and however possible so that no more communities endure like Highland Park did. So that's Bob Morgan's statement there in the aftermath of the Highland Park shooter, pleading guilty in this case. And as the Highland Park shooter pleads guilty, here's a headline from the Center Square from yesterday. And again, if you subscribe to the Center Square's newsletter, you'll get this in your inbox each morning, but not a bad idea to head over and check out the headlines throughout the day. But as Highland Park shooter pleads guilty, claims against Illinois State Police remain. Now, this gets a little into the weeds, but I think those who've been tracking the story understand this, right? So the criminal trial against Robert Crimo III has ended because he pleaded guilty, but the civil cases against Illinois State Police for giving Crimo a firearm owner ID card, those civil cases continue. Right? So just as the jury was to commence yesterday, Crimo pleaded guilty, 21 counts of first-degree murder, 48 counts of attempted murder. He'll be sentenced April 23rd. It's expected he'll spend the rest of his life behind bars. Now, as I stated, Illinois legislators used the Highland Park shooting as one of the reasons why they moved forward to ban more than 170 semi-automatic firearms and magazines over certain capacities. Highland Park, by the way, had their own local semi-automatic ban in place when Crimo killed people with a semi-automatic rifle. Crimo had purchased the firearms legally in 2020, having been issued a firearm owner's ID card by Illinois State Police in 2019. His father, Robert Crimo Jr., a former mayoral candidate, he was charged in connection with how his son obtained a FOID card, because someone under the age of 21 in Illinois to get a FOID card has to have a parent or guardian essentially sponsor their application. Now, Illinois State Police, they face 29 claimants in separate lawsuits through the Illinois Court of Claims for issuing Crimo a FOID card. And those claims could be very, very expensive. All right. If you click through on the link, you'll see the story that I wrote back in July where, they're facing these complaints, and it's going to be pretty pricey if indeed it goes through. I mean, we're talking millions and millions of dollars in claims that these survivors have against state police. So one of the charges within that civil complaint says ISP should have denied the FOID card application made by Crimo that was used to purchase firearms, including the one purchased February 7th, 2020 to perpetrate the shooting on July 4th, 2022. ISP approved the transaction even though it knew or should have known that Crimo had wrongfully been issued a FOID card. The day after the 2022 Independence Day shooting, Lake County Sheriff Deputy Chris Covelli, he disclosed local police responded to Crimo's home for a domestic violence call in 2019, but didn't make an arrest. Nonetheless, Highland Park Police did notify Illinois State Police of that with what's called a clear and present danger report. Get that other screen out of there. So, again, essentially what happened, Robert Crimo III, he is at home. His loved ones are worried about him. Apparently, he's making threats to himself and others. Police visit. They confiscate knives. They leave. Knives are returned. They then go for another call, at least one other time, to the Crimo residence and have another incident there. I think this one was more about self-harm that they were worried about. So clearly, Highland Park Police sent Illinois State Police a clear and present danger report, which should have prevented Crimo from getting a FOID card. At least that's what the plaintiffs say. Now, Illinois State Police Director Brendan Kelly, he tried to explain this back in, 2022 in July. Here's what he had to say about the criticism of Illinois State Police, as some say, dropping the ball and giving Crimo, somebody who shouldn't have had one, a FOID card.
And if you look at the report that was understandably submitted by the Highland Park Police Department in response to the information that they had, and then you look at the law that, with regards to clear and present danger, what the statute requires, what is that threshold? That did not meet that threshold. That's the consensus from old analysts and new analysts alike. We vetted it multiple times. Would that have met the threshold? And the consensus is no. After that point, there being no new development, no additional arrest, no additional criminal record, no new mental health prohibitor, nothing that indicated that the individual had been checked into a mental health facility that requires a new report. No basis for a firearms restraining order had been filed or an order of protection. All the things that are under the law that would be able to help us stop from issuing a firearms identification card. None of those factors were present.
So he says that they had analysts, old and new, review it and say, hey, this clear and present danger report's not enough by itself to block somebody from getting a FOID card. Rather interesting. Is the FOID card actually, doing what it was intended to do, or is it really just a bunch of hurdles and hoops to jump through and to trip people up who want to be law-abiding? They discussed this in the Joint Committee Administrative Rules hearing back in 2022 because Illinois State Police, after acknowledging, they had the clear and present danger report, but it was not actionable, they went through and said that they need to change their rules internally when it comes to clear and present danger reports and FOID applications to make sure that this type of thing doesn't happen again. Well, that all has to go through a legislative process called the Joint Committee on Administrative Rules. Here is Senate Minority Leader John Curran, when I think he was just a state senator back in 2022, questioning Illinois State Police about this.
When the application, or when the CMP report, clear and present danger report, was received, and there was no FOID application on file, or there was no FOID card action or issuance that had previously occurred, the matter then concluded, and there's no action taken on the clear and present danger report. That's what the practice was in September of 2019.
There was no action that could be taken because nothing was pending. Yes, sir.
No determination, no investigation was done by reviewing officer. No determination was made on that CMP report because there was no FOID card issued, no application pending. The next day, you're telling the public that a review was done and a burden was not sustained. I'm asking which is it? And I mean, you're talking in the press, we're reviewing your rule. I want to be helpful. I just want to make sure I understand what we're addressing to make sure that we have a totality of a response that's going to ensure public safety.
So it goes on. It went on from there, and you can actually, in the archives of the Center Square, you can see that linked up as well in the story from yesterday about Cremo pleading guilty. But it goes on from there. And Curran, after that JCAR hearing, I chatted with him briefly and just asked him, where we're at in all of this, and are the answers clear enough? Are the rules that were put into place necessary, or could they have used the clear and present danger report in 2019 to block Cremo from getting a FOID card? Here's Senator Curran. Dan, go.
So it's still very vague and murky as to what happened here. We need a clear answer. It would seem to make sense to me when we have a tragic situation like July 4th that happened, that highlights a problem in our safety net around guns, that we first diagnose the problem, what happened specifically, and address that problem before we move on to anything else. That still hasn't been done here. That's step one in promoting better gun safety and public safety. And until that's done, I'm not sure we should be moving on to 2, 3, and 4. We have to make sure this is done first.
So we have a FOID card in place. It's meant to be a way to check firearms owners and to do backgrounds and have an extra step for them to purchase firearms, and people can have their FOID cards revoked. And when they're revoked, they're supposed to surrender their FOID card and firearms to police, and police have the ability to go after those who have revoked FOID cards to confiscate the FOID card and any firearms. That in Illinois, the law requires you to have this FOID card. While I understand it's being challenged in the courts, and there's been some rulings that the FOID card is unconstitutional, it's still the law of the land until the final actions are taken by the courts. But the FOID card is there to kind of have this process in place. And back in July of 2024, Brendan Kelly said, hey, we're making efforts and strides and getting FOID cards revoked from people, away from them, and going after their firearms as well.
We've had tremendous success on a number of fronts, not just the universal background check solution that we came up with, but also the tremendous progress we've made when it comes to clear and present danger, more enforcement of firearms restraining orders, getting resources to local law enforcement, not just the state police, to be able to enforce these laws. So there's a whole host of things that have become a reality and that we're doing on a daily basis. Just from June of last year to June of this year, over 11,000 reports of clear and present dangers have been submitted to the Illinois State Police from local law enforcement, from schools, from mental health officials. And in reviewing those, 10,000 of those were founded. And that there was evidence, there was enough information to say that this person was a danger and met the threshold for the statute. And that resulted in thousands of revocations. That resulted in thousands of individuals being denied the ability to get a firearm. The firearms F-tip program, when someone tries to purchase a firearm, over 15,000 of those last year. So if you start to add those numbers up, just in a year time frame, the laws in the state of Illinois that are trying to protect people and trying to make sure that we don't put guns in the hands of people who shouldn't have them. That's over 25,000 times that we've done that just in the past year.
And again, that's Brendan Kelly, the director of Illinois State Police from 2024 in July. So just last year, like 7-8 months ago. But listen, there's still issues here, right? Here's another headline from the Center Square. Illinois' gun ID card scrutinized amid violent crime outcomes. After a triple homicide suicide in Bloomington, you've got another instance here. A Bloomington Police Department news release last month said a firearm used in a triple homicide suicide was recovered at the scene under the body of Christopher Simmons. The firearm was legally purchased by Simmons in 2021. In 2022, Simmons is FOID card 2023 for a misdemeanor gun charge, but he didn't have any actions apparently taken to get the firearm and the FOID card from Simmons. So you've got these high-profile instances of the FOID card. You know, what's it really doing? Is it? Yeah, Brendan Kelly says, hey, thousands of people have had their FOID card revoked, and we've followed up and done revocations on those, but there's still others that it hasn't happened with. And is that the answer to have this FOID card be an impetus to either, allow people to have a firearm or to prevent people from having a firearm? Last week we talked about the Illinois House Gun Violence Prevention Committee that had a bill increasing the firearm transfer fee from $2 to $10 so they can use some of that money to give grants to local police to go and confiscate firearms from people who have revoked FOID cards. So is that the answer here? I just putting this out there for you, right? This is the overview of exactly what's going on. But again, Illinois State Police, I think, are still going to have to answer to $58 million in claims that the Illinois Court of Claims has filed with plaintiffs alleging ISP was negligent in giving the Highland Park shooter a FOID card. And now that the Highland Park shooter has pleaded guilty, does that mean that case, those cases are going to move forward? I guess we'll watch and see. But clearly, you've got some significant questions and some loopholes and some people falling through the cracks where it gets pretty contentious. Some other gun news today. You've got the U.S. Supreme Court. They are hearing a case where Mexico has brought against U.S. gun manufacturers. SCOTUS blog says that just 2 weeks after the Trump administration designated 6 Mexican cartels as foreign terrorists, Mexico will come to the U.S. Supreme Court today in an effort to hold U.S. gun makers liable for cartel violence committed with U.S.-made weapons. This is a very similar issue that we were seeing in Illinois, where Chicago sued Glock, the gun manufacturer, saying that Glock makes their firearms too easy to convert into full auto and needs to be held responsible for that. Looking at the court docket here for Cook County, the case, they've got some dates coming up, right? They do have, March 21st. It's going to be open call. So there will be a hearing in Cook County Court, 2 o'clock. But then May 19th, another open call. So these might be just status conferences, maybe getting things on the calendar, setting things up. So while the U.S. Supreme Court is going to hear the case that Mexico brought against U.S. gun manufacturers, you've still got the case that Chicago brought against Glock pending, with some future court dates to keep in mind. It is Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Thank you so much for being with me each and every weekday morning. And we've got tons more to tackle, all right? The Illinois legislature's in session today, so be back with us tomorrow and catch what the latest is out of there. All right, it's Illinois in Focus Daily. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Get the newsletter at thecentersquare.com and get the podcast where you get podcasts. Just search Illinois in Focus. I know some of you are like, hey, Bishop's show needs to be an hour long. I get it. I appreciate that. There's only so much time in the mornings. and getting it all together and ready for the news day and then being on the ground at the Capitol, it's a lot. There's no question. So I'll get out to you what I can when I can, obviously. But hey, tomorrow we're going to have a lot to tackle. Obviously, we'll see what we can get from the U.S. Supreme Court's hearing on the gun challenge that Mexico's brought. We'll also tackle what's going on at the Illinois State House with a whole bunch of different news conferences, some committee hearings and such. But also President Donald Trump's speech tonight in front of a joint session of Congress. We'll do what we can to unpack that for you and bring you some of the response from Illinois politicos. So that's just a preview of what to expect for tomorrow, right? Here with Illinois in Focus Daily, I'm Greg Bishop. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Wake up with us each and every weekday morning. The live chat is always bumping, and good to see those live numbers coming up and up and up. So let's keep it going here. It's Illinois in Focus Daily. I'm Greg Bishop. Have yourself a wonderful and as dry as you can, Tuesday morning.